Hello everyone and welcome back. In this video you're going to learn about conditional operators and how to use them in if statements. And also you're going to learn about how to get input from the user and know more about null values. Firstly, let's create two variables. Variable A with a value of 3 and variable V with a value of 2. Now in Kotlin, if statements are pretty much the same in Java, also with logical operators and conditional operators. But for the sake of demonstration, I will try to, if A is greater than B, then this println function will execute. Now let's try to run this, and we got A is greater than B. Now if we want to make another if statement, all we have to do is to write else if, and let's say A is less than B. Then now let's tweak the value of A to 1 and run this, and we got A is less than B. So this executed because A is not greater than B, which is A is less than B. So this false, and if this is false, then if will be checked. So it is true, then the println function will be executed. And if you want to make an else statement, if both of the conditions are false, then else statement will execute. And let's add a function here. Let's say A is equal to B. And let's tweak the value of A to 2. And we got A is equal to B. So our else statement is executed because the two conditions here are false. Now, if statements can also be used in variables when using condition to assign values. So the way we can do that is, let's try to create a variable C, and in that case let's use an if statement and a parenthesis. Let's give it a condition of if A is equal to say 3. Let's say A plus B is equal to 5. Then C would be 5, and if it's not true, then the value of C will be 10. So this statement here is, what it means is that when A plus B is equal to 5, then the value of C will be 5, and if not, then the value of C is 10. Now, as you can notice, we didn't use curly braces, because if an if statement has only one command, then using curly braces are not necessary. But we can actually use some curly braces too, but it is not necessary. Also here we can remove curly braces here. It will still work because if an else statement only contains one command, then it's not necessary to use curly braces. In this part you're going to learn how to accept inputs from the user, and the way we can do that is by using a readline function. Now let me create a new val. Let's say this user in, and let's set this, as I mentioned before, readline. But now, as you can see here, we have a string with a question mark. So readline returns a string, but as we notice, there are a question mark here before the string, and what that means is that this readline function can return null or string. It can return null if there's something, let's imagine if there's something wrong in the console and the readline function can't even read a line, then it has to return something, and that would be null. So if there's no problem and the user input something, then it will return a string. So let's try to click enter, and now let's add a println function here. And let's say the value, let's see the value of user in. Let's print the value of user in. The value of user input is, and let's insert the value of user in our string by using a $sign. Now this readline function does is that this blocks our code, so when we run a program it just waits for us to give an input. So this readline function only resumes or proceed to the next line, remaining lines, if the user inputted something. So let's run a program. Now as you can see here that the println function doesn't execute because the readline function blocks our code. So the way we can rid of that is by using by inputting something, let's say dev, and we got the user input is dev. So it prints out the value of our user in. But the thing is, this user in here, our user in, we can perform string functions. And let me try to delete this and I can show it for you. So let's write user in and let's try to make it to uppercase the way we did on the last video. So to uppercase. But now our IDE marks our dot operator here as red because this user in can be either string or null, depends on the input. So if this is null, then we're just accessing to uppercase to a null object which doesn't exist. So the way we can fix it is by using a question mark. And this question mark does is that it checks the user in if it is null or not. If it is null, then we're just going to print nothing. If it is not null, then it will continue to convert it to uppercase. So let's try to run our program so that we can see what will happen if we input nothing or something. So let's try to input dev, and as you can see there's nothing wrong here because we inputted something and we converted it to uppercase. Now when we try to input nothing, let's say, it just prints nothing because what question mark did is that we usually check this user in if it is null, or if it is not, then we're going to continue to convert it to uppercase. Now always remember, when we try to use a readline function, we must also use question mark for that, so we can check if it is null or not before we can do some operations on it. But the most important here is that this readline returns string every time. So when we try to input a number, it will always be a string. Let's try to perform an operation, say 2. So our IDE marks the minus sign as red because this user in is a string. It will always be a string or null. The way we can rid of that is by converting our user in as an integer. So the way we can do that is by using that .toInt. But as you can see, our IDE marks our dot operators as red, so we put a question mark before that. And now we still have some error, and because this user in here might contain null. So what we're doing here is that we are performing arithmetic operations to null. So the way we can fix this is by explicitly checking if the user in is null, and the way we can do that is by putting a simple if statement and write user in is not equal to null. So we have to compare if user in is not equal to null. And as you can see here, the question mark is unnecessary to put before the dot operator. So it means that this user in will always be not null because we explicitly check it if it is null. So in this line here, we're 100% sure that user in will contain something. And now our IDE doesn't mark our minus sign as red. So let's try to input a number here in our console. Let's try 15, and we got 13, because when we inputted 15, we check user in is not equal to null, and it is not null, so we convert it to integer and subtract 2 from it, and we got 13. But beware, this code here will crash your program by inputting a string. So we got a number format exception here, which means that Kotlin doesn't know how to convert a string to an integer. So it just throws a number format exception. So always bear in mind. So in a real world program, we should always check if the input is a number or not, if we want to perform arithmetic operations. But in this program, we just going to trust the user that they will always input a number. So that's it in this video, and thank you for watching. See you